Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel, mgrahamsews. This video tutorial is for this beautiful bag called the Howie Bowler Bag, and it's by UhOh Creations. This bag is a really fun sew. You could make this in a day. That's from start to finish, and you end up with this really gorgeous bag. Now, before we discuss some of the features of the bag, there's just something that I wanted to mention, and that is that this is filmed like a sew along. So there's no parts sped up, nothing's cut out, you see me sew everything. The only time that I don't do something on camera is when there's doubles or more of a pattern piece. So for example, we have strap anchors. We have 4 strap anchors. I show you how to sew one, then I'll go off camera and I will attach the other ones. And that's just because I feel that if I show you how to sew one, you don't need to sit there and watch me sew the other ones. It makes for a really long tutorial. So that helps shorten the length of the tutorial. So I show you how to do one, I pause the camera, I go off, and I attach the other ones, then I come back. So all you'll need to do is hit pause after we have attached the one, hit the pause button, go off and attach your others, and then come back, and you'll pick right back up where we're going on to the next step. So I wanted to mention that because that is really important. Now let's continue with discussing the features of the bag. You'll notice that there are handles, so you have these short little handles that you can wear on your arm. You also have a strap, which you can make it a crossbody strap or a shoulder strap. Now you do have the choice of cutting this to whatever length you want. If you just want to make it a shoulder strap and don't have it adjustable, that's totally your choice. I like the adjustable strap because you can tighten it as tight as it can go and you can wear it as a shoulder bag, or you can wear it crossbody to keep yourself hands-free. The front of the bag features a flap with a pocket. So the flap has this wallet closure, so it opens up and then you have a nice big pocket here, and your phone will fit inside. I'll just show you how it looks with the phone inside. So my phone, which is a pretty big phone, does fit inside, just like that. So it's a nice sized pocket. You can also put a wallet in there if you want, because it does have this little wallet closure. You could put a small wallet in there if you want. I fussy cut my flap so that you would see my flower, and I also fussy cut the lining flower as well so that you would see it when you open up the flap. The back of the bag has no pocket or anything, so your strap anchors are exposed. So you have that as the back of the bag. And to note, the rivets are not in the pattern. I just added those because I like how the rivets look. The top of the bag has a zipper closure, and it is a double pull zipper closure. So when we open the bag, you have a really roomy bag, and on the one side here you can see that there is a zipper pocket. Now there isn't a whole lot of pockets in this bag, so if you want, you can go and use your favorite methods and add more pockets. You can add some slip pockets, some more zipper pockets if you want. You could even add this pocket here with the flap that's on the front on the back, or just add this pocket here to the back as well if you want. You could really make this your own and have a lot of fun with it. You can do some beautiful embroidery on the back if you want. You can do some beautiful embroidery on the front. You can fussy cut like I did. You could really make this your own. It's, as I said, a really great bag. It's a fun sew. It looks like it would be difficult, but I promise it's not. It comes together really easily. Everything fits perfectly. I absolutely loved making this bag. I had a lot of fun, and it's a really good size for, an evening out. You could make it in some vinyls, faux leather, cork, anything you want to really make it a dressy bag and make it for an evening out. Or you can have this casual everyday bag. The choice is yours. So again, this is the Howie Bowler Bag. Let's get started making our bags. So as always, the very first thing you'll want to do is read through the entire pattern. This is very important because oftentimes designers give information regarding different interfacings and different materials. So for example, depending on the materials you're using, you may need to use a different interfacing or no interfacing at all. And also sometimes depending on those materials, you may need to cut out pattern pieces slightly different. So you'll want to make note of that before you begin cutting out your pattern pieces so that you don't cut something incorrectly or cut the wrong amount of interfacing, etc. It also familiarizes you with the construction of the bag. That way there, as you're going through making the bag, it'll make sense on what you're doing in the following steps. So once you've read through the entire pattern, you're ready to cut out all your pattern pieces. And as you've seen, I have all of mine cut out already. I did this ahead of time. I don't like to do this on camera because I just feel it takes a little too long to sit there and watch me cut everything out. so I do cut it off camera. So all my pattern pieces are prepped. I've also gone ahead and fused any interfacing to them. So some pattern pieces have specific interfacing. So for example, this one here, the front pocket, it has fusible fleece attached to it, where some of the other pattern pieces have foam. So you'll want to make note of that when you are fusing your interfacing. I've also gone ahead and made the marks for the centers. So you'll see my center marks and my markings on my main pattern piece as given on the pattern piece for markings that we need to make when we attach our gusset. And I've also marked where the top is, and I've written that this is the front because I've made some markings on this one for the front piece. So I've gone ahead and done that, and I've made markings for pocket pieces. Now the reason why I've gone ahead and done some of these markings, for example like this on my pocket facing, is because I don't show any measurements, no rulers, no pattern pieces, nothing like that on camera, and that's for the protection of the designer, but also because I film during testing, and oftentimes things can change during testing. So a measurement may change, maybe placement of some hardware may change. So if it does change in the pattern, my tutorial will not be affected because there's no measurements or anything given. So you will need to have your pattern open beside you so that you can follow along and know what the measurements are. Now, the other thing you'll notice is I am using the labels which are included in the pattern, and normally I wouldn't use these labels, but you can see right here I'm using the label. Normally I wouldn't use these labels because they often have measurements on them, and as I said, I don't give measurements, but these ones that Tara has included in the pattern don't have measurements on them, so I can use these handy little labels, and they are really handy because everything is labeled with what the pattern piece is. So when we get to that step in the pattern, I just have to read the label and know which pattern piece I'm grabbing. Normally I would just write it on the back of the pattern piece, but these are nice and handy, and I'll have these anytime I want to make this pattern. Now that I have all my pattern pieces and all my interfacing attached, there is one more interfacing that you do need to attach to your pattern pieces, and that is your foam. And if you're like me and using a sew-in foam, you cannot fuse it with your iron. Now there are some foams that are fusible, so you'll be able to fuse it, but this is a sew-in foam. So what you need to do with your sew-in foam is you need to baste it around the edges. So all of the pattern pieces except the flap will be based around all 4 edges, and when you baste, you just use the longest stitch length that you have on your machine, and you just go all the way around, back stitching at start and stop, and you're going away from the edge that little bit. Now with the flap, the reason why I wanted to mention this is we're not going around all 4 edges because the flap foam is cut shorter in length than it is, so it's not the same here. So at the top we don't have the foam up here. So you just need to baste down one side edge across the bottom and up the other side edge. You're not going across the top here. So just down one side, across the bottom, and up the other side. So just 3 edges. But everything else will have you basting it around all 4 edges. So that goes for the zipper gusset, the base, and your main pattern pieces, which again, I already have the foam attached, and I've made all my markings and everything else. I've also cut out my straps and all my strap anchors, so I've cut those all out. I've cut my zipper, and I've got all my hardware, and everything is in this bag. It just keeps it all together. You do use this bar here. So I've got this little bar right here, and it is with the open ends. You need to make sure the ends are open, and I will put this on my bag during construction. So I put this all together in this little bag. It just keeps it all together. I don't end up dropping something or losing something, and it's just easy to find it. So now that we have all our pattern pieces all cut out, interfacings fused, we are ready to start our bag. So the first thing we need is our main exteriors. So I'm just going to grab these. So we need our 2 main exteriors. And on the 2 main exteriors, there's some markings that you need to make from the top down and from the sides over. So you'll want to refer to the pattern for what those measurements are. So again, from the sides over and top down. And those markings are going to be where we're going to place our strap anchors. And you should have 4 strap anchors cut out. So I'm just trying to find them. So there's the strap anchors. You should have 4 of these cut out. And then you will need the rectangle rings. So I'm going to grab those all out now. don't want to lose my little papers. So I'm going to get all my hardware out. This one doesn't want to come out of the bag. There we go. So we need our 4 strap anchors, and that's these ones here, and 1 main. So we'll start with this one. And I'm going to use some double-sided tape here as well to help hold everything in place. All right, so what you're going to do is take a strap anchor and you're going to fold it over. Now there is a measurement in the pattern for how far you're going to fold it over, so you'll want to refer to the pattern for that. But you're going to fold it over at that mark, just like that. So right at that mark. So I'd already gone ahead and made all my marks on my strap anchors again before, so you'll fold it over just like that. Now I'm going to use a little bit of tape here to help hold it in place. And I'm going to go all the way down. So at that mark again, I'm going to fold it. And my strap hardware will be at the top here in the crease. So just like that. So you have it folded at the back and at the top. Now we're going to take this other end that we didn't fold and we're going to fold it over again using that same measurement that's given in the pattern and fold it over. Now they should touch in the middle. Those 2 raw edges should touch here in the center. And if they're not touching, you want them to touch in the center. Just like that. So we'll repeat that for the other 3. I'll only do 2 for now, and then I'll go off camera and I'll do the other ones. So again, fold it at that line, fold it down, and then fold the other one again at that mark or the measurement given in the pattern, fold it down just like that. Now, I'm not going to do the last 2 because I'll go off camera and do that. I don't feel you need to sit and watch me do the other ones. Now, using the marks that we made, we're going to place these strap anchors along those lines that we drew. And so here's my first line right here. So I'm going to place that there, my long edge along that line we drew from the side, and the top of the strap anchor is going to meet that line we drew from the top edge down. So again, here's my line from the top down right here, and here's my line from the side over. Long edge is going to meet that line we drew from the side over to the middle, and then the top of my anchor will meet at that line. So I'm going to use some double-sided tape again to help hold it in place. Again, lining up that side edge with the line we drew, and I just want this to all line up nicely. My sides to line up. So if you have to make some adjustment, make them now before you sew everything in place. Go. So it'll look just like that. So here we measured over from the side edge, that's where my line is, and my side edge of my anchor meets that line I made. The line from the top down is where the top of my anchor is. Now I'm going to switch to a zipper foot so I can get nice and close to my hardware without hitting it. And I'm going to stitch this down, going all the way around. And when I get up by the hardware, what I'm going to do is I'm going to back stitch just to ensure that it's really held in place. So I'm starting at the bottom here, back stitch there. So I'm sewing all the way up. And now I'm at the top where my hardware is, so I'm going to go across the bottom of the hardware. And I'm back stitching. I'm going to go back one more time. Now, when I'm going down this other side, because the hardware is here, I don't want to go forward. I'm going to go backwards a couple of stitches just to make sure it clears my presser foot. Then I'll turn my presser foot around and I'll continue back down the other side. Just like that. So there's the first one. I'm trying to figure out what's on my bag here. So there's the first one attached. Now we're going to repeat that for the second one. Again, lining up the side edge with that mark we made and the top with the mark we made from the side, or the top down, sorry. And I'm starting at the bottom again. And again, I'm going back a couple of stitches just so that my foot clears the hardware. Sometimes I get skip stitches if I go forward rather than backwards that first little bit. There we go, and that's how that looks so far. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to repeat this for the second piece here, and then I'll come back and we will continue on. I've sewn both the strap anchors to the second panel. So the other thing I've gone ahead and done is I added rivets. This is not part of the pattern, it's just something I like to do. I like to add the rivets. Feel like there's a little bit of extra security with them. Again, not in the pattern, just something I like to do. If you don't have rivets, you can use Chicago screws. If you don't have either and you want a little bit of extra security, you can always sew an X within this strap anchor here, and that also helps hold it in place. But we've backstitched at the top here, which gives that extra security, and we've backstitched down here. Again, I also like it because it adds that extra security, but it also adds a little bit of extra bling, which I really like. Now we need to grab our handle. So get out both your handles. So here's both the handles, and on one piece, we'll start with just one for now, and then I'll go off camera again and I'll do the other one. And I will be using rivets to hold this together rather than sewing. Again, personal preference. You don't need to use rivets. You can sew it, but I will show you that. So we're going to take our handle and we're going to insert it into the rectangle ring, and there is a measurement you need to make from the short raw edge up. I've gone ahead and made both measurements because we're going to fold this over our rectangle ring, and then we're going to fold it down to conceal the raw edges. So take your pattern piece, lay it right sides up, slide your handle up through the rectangle ring at that mark you made. So just like that, you can place the clip. So right now it looks like that. Then you need to fold it down to hide those raw edges at the next measurement given. And I'm going to use a little bit of double-sided tape to help hold it, because it's kind of moving on me a little bit. So I'm folding it right now at that mark I made, and then bring it up and clip it in place. So you will have no raw edges at all. So now we're going to do that to the other side, but first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold the short edge so that it is folded at that mark, using my double-sided tape to help hold it in place. So there was a second mark that we fold to hide the raw edges. That's where I'm folding it right now. So I folded it down against itself. Now we want to make sure our handle is not twisted. So bring it down like that, your handle's not twisted, and bring this side over towards the rectangle ring like this. Slide it through the rectangle ring up to that mark that you've made for the measurement from the short edge, and fold it around the rectangle ring. And just make sure that both sides are the same. Now I will sew this just to show you how to do it. I'll do one row of stitching. You can back stitch across. So I'm going to switch back to my regular presser foot. And I will add a rivet. That's again a personal choice. You don't need to, but you just sew across. I'm going to cut all my threads. I'll sew the other side. So again, sew across. Trim any threads. There we go. It was hard to get that little thread to come out. So that's how it looks from the wrong side. So you'll see that there's no raw edges at all because they are tucked in between here. And that's how it looks from the front, and my handle is not twisted. So I'm going to go off camera. I'm going to add the second one. I'll add a little rivet there just because I like how the bling is when I add rivets. And then I'll come back and we will continue on. Now, once you have that done, just to note, you'll want to choose which one you want for your front and which one you want for the back. And you want it to be the ones that look prettiest. There's always one that sort of looks a little off. At least for me anyways, there's always one that looks a little off. And the reason why you want to choose the nicer one for the back is because the front is going to have that pocket. So you want the back to be the nicest one because it's not going to have a pocket over it, over these strap anchors or anything. So make your back the nicer one, the one that has the straighter, the one that has the nicer stitching. Again, I always have one that's a little bit different than the other, so I'm going to also choose which one's going to be the front and which one's going to be the back. So I'm going to go attach my second handle and then I'll come right back. So both my handles are now attached, just like that, and as I said, I added rivets. Again, it's not in the pattern, I just like to add it. So those are done. We can put this off to the side for now. Now we need to grab our front pocket piece, so that is this piece here, and our front pocket lining, this piece here. What you're going to do is place the front pocket right side up, so your front pocket exterior is going to be right sides up, so it's pretty sides facing you right now. Then you're going to take your front pocket lining and you're going to place it right sides down. So they are pretty sides touching. Clip it in place. And then you're going to sew this using the seam allowance given in the pattern, going from the pocket lining edge all the way down, following this curve, following the straight edge here, all the way up and following the curve at the top. We're going to stitch that again using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And don't forget to back stitch at start and stop. All right, now we need to snip into the seam allowance. Oops. You want to clip it right up to the corners, but not clipping your stitching. So the curves in the corner, just make some little snips. Again, be careful not to cut your stitches. If you do, you can just go back and re-stitch it. So just like that. So you see how I have snips there? Just like that. And that'll help this turn nicely for you. So I'm just giving it a press here, and then I'm going to turn it. Now this is where we'll need to go to our iron, and we'll need to press this with our iron. So we're going to make sure it's all pushed out. You can use your turning tool if you have one, so something like this or a chopstick, to really push those corners out nicely, get them all nice and rounded and all pointed out, just like that. So I'm going to go to my iron, I'm going to give this a really good press, and then I'll come back and we will top stitch it and then attach it to our bag. So I've pressed the top of my pocket here really flat. It's nice and flat. Now we need to grab our male part of our closure, and we need to test it before we top stitch because we need to see if we need to add any extra interfacing. And as you can see, mine is very thin, so I do need to add that extra interfacing in here to help with the wallet closure to be held nicely and tight against the material. So we're going to open this up. And I have a piece of foam here that I cut. I'm going to add some double-sided tape just to help hold it in place. And it's about the same length as my closure, so I really want to make sure this is centered. If you make it a little bit longer, that's okay. So centered, and I'm going right up against that seam where I stitched the two panels together. It's right under there. Now I'm going to test it and see if the wallet closure fits, if it's nice and snug. If it's not snug, you can add a little bit more. Mine's good with one layer of foam. So now that that's in there, I'm going to top stitch this in place. So I'm going to top stitch around the whole edge. Now I don't want any back stitching at the top, so what I'm going to do is start stitching, and I'm going to leave long thread tails, and I'm going to leave long thread tails at the end, and then I'll pull them through and tie them off. Now we're not stitching from one corner to the other, we're stitching from a mark we make from the edge. So you'll want to refer to the pattern how far that mark is to make, and then from that mark you'll stitch all the way down and around and back to the second mark. So again, refer to the pattern for what that mark is. And I can feel I'm going through the foam there that I added, which is good because that'll help hold that in place as well as that double-sided tape that I added. Long thread tails. Pull it through. Now the other thing you can do here after you tie them, first be careful how tight you pull your threads because I have had threads break on me before and then I have to unpick all my stitches and redo it. But the other thing you can do is add a little bit of glue or fray stop or fray check. That'll help add some extra security to the knot so that it doesn't come undone. I haven't had it happen, but for the extra security and peace of mind, you can do that. I will for this time. Oops. And as you can see, I knot it quite a few times just to really make sure that it's good. Oh, I didn't want to do that. And I'm just adding a dab of glue here on the knot. And the nice thing is this will be against the lining of the exterior of the bag. It'll all be sewn in after, so you're not going to see it. So there we go. That's how that looks when it's top stitched. And as I said, I have the foam there. So now that we know that the male half of the wallet closure is good because we've added that foam, we need to attach it. And this one's a bit different than other ones that you may have used where the screws are on the outside. So if you want, you can add your wallet closure when the bag is done if you're worried about when turning the bag right sides out and everything. I'm going to do that now. So I've got the wallet closure on. I'm making sure it is centered. So I'm centering it. Pushing it right up in. But first, I'm going to add a bit of glue to the channel. So inside the frame, I'm going to add some glue. Oops. And I still have that little plastic protection cover over it. And I'm going to leave that until my bag is completely done. Just making sure it's centered. There we go. Now I need to get the screws out. And I just got to find a little Ziploc to put these in. I was prepared because I knew that I'd have to cut these open. So here's my little Ziploc so I don't lose them. There we go. Now we will add the screws. So I've put the top of the pocket into the frame of the wallet closure. I will have to move that plastic just a little bit out of the way. And I'm just, screwing the screws in. My hands aren't working today. This screw. So now I'm just trying to get the screws in. There we go. There's one. second screw. And I'm just lifting that plastic covering off so I can get the screws in. And then I'm going to put it right back over. Now you can add a dab of glue where the screws are as well if you prefer. But because there's already glue within the channel, the glue will help hold the screws as well. I've never had screws come out at all. I'm going to leave this screw in here because it seemed like it didn't want to go in. I don't need it for the next one because we have some extra screws, so that's good. And I never screw these screws in with the frame in my hand because if your screwdriver slips, you're going to stab your hand. So always have it against the table, just for safety. And I wish my screwdrivers were magnetic, but they're not, so. Just work with it. All right. Don't want to lose these last screws. So there's the male half all installed, and like I said, I'm keeping that plastic coating over top just to make sure that it doesn't get scratched while we're working on our bag. But that's how the metal frame looks when it's attached. So as I was showing, you add the glue into the frame and you slip it on. And my foam is actually the same width as my frame, which is really weird. I did not plan that at all. So there it is. We've attached that frame. Now we need to grab the front of our bag. And remember I had said to choose which one will be your front and which one will be your back. So this one's my front, and that's just because it just looked a little bit nicer. The back here looks a little bit nicer. Looks the same, you can't really tell when you're looking at it, but it just looks a little nicer. Now with our front main right side up, we're going to place this constructed front pocket right side up on top, and we're going to ensure that the sides all line up. Get everything all lined up. Clip it in place. I just want to make sure. The other thing you can do is if you can see your center marks, line up your center mark too. So I have center marks, so I've got them all lined up now. And just trying to get everything lined up nicely. You really want these side edges and the curves to all match. Excuse me. And I know I'm adding a lot of clips. I really don't want this to shift for this next step. So just make sure it looks good. I'm making sure that my lines are lining up the same so I can see that it's in line with the stitching, which is perfect. Now what you're going to do is finish your top stitching up here. So you're going to start from the end and stitch over to where you started stitching, and then you'll do that on the other side. Start where you stopped stitching and stitch to the end. I'm not going to back stitch when I get to the center here. Again, I'll pull the thread tails through and tie them off. But in the beginning, I can back stitch. So there we go. I stopped right in the same hole I started in previously. I pulled my threads to the back. Now I'm going to tie it off. And you know what? I'll bring these together and tie them off over here. It's just a little bit of extra security. Cut your threads. Excuse me. And then again, On this side, starting in the hole instead of stopping, I'm going to start in the hole I stopped in originally. There we go. Long thread tails, pull them through, tie them off, and this means no back stitching at all on that top pocket there. It looks like one seamless line of stitching. And again, you can back stitch if you want. This is just something that I like to do. Takes a little bit more time, but I just feel like it's worth it. And see how it looks. You can see the stitching. No back stitching at all. I just like how it looks. It's seamless. You can't tell. It looks really nice. I really like it. So now what we're going to do, scroll down, is remove all these clips. Flip the pocket exterior up, out of the way, clip it so it's out of the way, and we're going to sew down this pocket side, across the bottom, and up the other side. And I'm going to put some some pins here to help hold it in place and nice and flat. There we go. So return your stitch length back to the length you like to use, and you want to get as close to the top stitching here, to the line at the bottom as you can. You want to get as close up to the sides here as you can. So what we're going to do is I'm going to start in the bottom center and I'm going to stitch up towards the top, because that is just going to be easier to help us get as close to that stitching as possible. Oops. There we go. Cut my threads, and now I'm going to go the other way. I'm going to go right across the whole bottom edge. And I always like to backstitch in corners just for some extra security. I'm sure you're noticing a theme here. I'm all about extra security. The attachment for the microphone is making me itchy. There we go. Cut all your little threads. So you can see I did stitch a second line here, but we went down one side, across the bottom, and up the other edge. And I came so that I started in the center and went up. That way there I can get nice and close to that stitching, because it's easier to go up towards the stitching than come down from it. And that way there I didn't stitch over that stitching. I stopped right there, and that holds that pocket in place as well. So now we have our beautiful front pocket all completed. Now we're going to construct our flap. So put that off to the side, grab out your two flap pieces, and you're going to, place one flap piece right side up and place your other one right sides down, so pretty sides touching. Now I made my flap so that when you look at it, this one is fussy cut, and it's going to show this, and I want this to be on the flap, but when we flip up the flap, to be facing the right way when you flip up the flap. So I have to make sure one's upside down and one's right side up. And if you did that too, that's what you'll do. If you want one to be facing the right way, it goes one facing the right direction and the other one upside down. But these are going right sides together right now. Just like this. So we're going to leave the top edge open. So we're going to sew around the 3 sides, leaving the top edge open. So down the side, across the bottom, and up the other side. And we're going to sew this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So back stitch at start and stop. Oops. Trim all your threads. So now we're going to trim the foam from the side seam allowances. So we do have basting stitches there, so you'll need to undo your basting stitches. So just take your seam ripper and pick out your basting stitches. It's hard for me to... There we go. So you're just unpicking those basting stitches here from the sides. And because there's back stitching here, I have to undo them individually. Of course, on camera, nothing works the way it usually does. Or the way it should. I also think I need a new seam ripper. It doesn't seem to be as sharp anymore. Okay. So now we're going to trim that foam from the seam allowance on the sides. And I'm using my duckbill scissors just to make sure I don't cut any material or any threads or stitching that I shouldn't cut. Okay, now we're going to trim our corners. Careful not to cut your stitches. So you have a piece that has no foam here in the sides. I've trimmed it all out. Well, sort of. Maybe I can trim this down a little bit more. Okay, so foam out of the sides and the seam allowance is trimmed on the corner. So I'm going to just quickly turn this right sides out. I'm not going to go press it yet because I want to see if my frame, so the male half of the wallet frame, or the wallet closure, sorry, fits on this. I'm just poking everything out. And see, when we lift up our wallet closure, the flap, I will see the flower facing the correct direction. Took a little bag of goodies. So see if the channel fits. It's nice and snug. So we have a nice snug fit. I don't need to add any extra interfacing. It's nice and snug. So now I'm going to go to my iron. I'm going to press this really well, and then I will come back and I will show you how we install that wallet closure on the bottom part of the flap here. So the side that has been sewn. So I'm going to go press it really well, and then I will come back and we'll continue on. All right, so I've gone ahead and pressed my flap. I've also gathered some of my supplies I need for when we install our frame, and I'm just checking again to make sure if after I pressed, yep, everything still fits, so we're good. Now we're going to top stitch around the 3 edges of the flap, so down the one side across the bottom and up the other edge. So just there, not the top. And you can backstitch here because this is going to be sewn into the seams later, or not into the seams, sewn later, so you won't see it. So now I'm going to install the female half of my frame. So again, slide the frame onto the bottom of your flap, get it all the way in, just like that. Make sure it's centered so there's no overhanging of the flap on either side. And then I'm going to use my marking tool and I'm going to mark where that opening is. So I've marked where that opening is. So if you take my flap out, I don't know if you can see that. I'm trying to see. Right there, you can see it. So I've made the opening. Now, when you are placing your flap, the side that has the screw holes will be on the lining side of your flap. Now I'm going to cut out that hole. So I'm going to find which one of these work best. And I think this one will do. Just going to make sure. I don't see any other ones that could work. Oh, maybe this one. Actually, this one can work even better. So I'm going to use these . And what this is just a little die set. This is for cutting leather and these openings, and I got this from Amazon. So I'm just going to, I know that's loud. Hammer the hole. And this little edge here that didn't get cut, I'm just going to make sure that it doesn't interfere with anything. So I need to just trim away a little bit more. So I like to go a little bit at a time just to make sure that I don't cut too much. All right, let's check it again. And what I'll do here is I'll also add some fray stop along this edge. I'm just cutting the threads here that are long. I'll add some fray stop along that edge so that it doesn't fray over time. actually cut the end off after, I think. I'll see. So it's just a little bit of work to get it nice and snug in there. Again, I go a little bit at a time just to make sure. So just like that, that's good. I'm not going to cut any more. Again, like I said, I like to cut a little bit at a time just to make sure that I don't cut too much off, because we don't want it to escape from the frame. All right, so now that we have that done, I'm just going to put this all off to the side for now. There we go. Now that we have that all done, and you can use your scissors too to cut this out. Before I had that little tool, those little cutters, I just used my scissors. So now I'm going to back stitch over where this top stitching is so it doesn't come undone. And as I mentioned, I'm going to apply some fray stop around the opening of the hole that I made. And any threads right now that you're seeing that are loose, go ahead and trim them away. It is a little bit of work. Maybe I'm doing a few extra steps than what most people would do, but I just like to ensure that my frames look nice. I dripped a lot of glue here, or not glue, fray stop. So I'm just going to grab a tissue to wipe that up. There we go. I always make a little bit of a mess. So again, I'm just going to try this in the closure, in the wallet. Beautiful. It's looking good. All right. So everything's all trimmed up. I've tried it out again. I'm going to add some glue into the frame, just like we did for the first half of the frame, going all the way across. And this is the glue I use here, Beacon 3-in-1 glue. I just buy it at my local fabric store. So again, your screw holes, you want them to be on the side of the lining. And I'm just pushing it all using the end of my scissors. I probably shouldn't use the end of my scissors, but I did. Looks perfect. Now we'll grab some screws and we will screw this in. It's really easy. It's a little bit time consuming because I'm picky when it comes to cutting those holes, but it's worth it. So now we're just going to screw these in. They're so small, they're a little bit hard to hold. And this little screwdriver set that I have, I just got this at the dollar store. My husband found it for me and got it because I was complaining about the screwdriver that I did have. And it's great because it has all different, it has the star and the flathead. It's great. And again, I'm leaving that plastic coating protection layer over it until I'm done with the bag. So I just flip it back up. This extra screw I'll put in there. I always keep the extra little screws. I have a whole little kit of them, and if I ever lose a screw or it breaks or a screw falls out of hardware, I always have extra screws to use. Just going to make sure these are all tightened. You can see I've got extra screws in there. There's like 4 other screws in there still from another time. All right, so that's how it looks. Again, the screws are on the same side as the lining. So when I flip my flap up, my frame is, or my flower, sorry, is facing the right way. And it's fussy cut, but I cut off a little bit at the top. That's okay. And a little bit at the bottom is cut off. But when we sew this, we're going to lose some of the flower anyways. So that's how it looks. That's how you install that wallet closure. Super easy, just a little bit time consuming. As I said, I take a few extra steps that maybe not everybody else does, like the gluing and the adding the fray stop and stuff. But I do like to add that because that will help prevent these areas here from fraying within the frame. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our exterior front piece here, and we need to place it right sides up. So it's looking at you. And we're going to lay the flap on top. Now there's a mark that you need to make from the top edge down, and I'm just going to go over here off camera and measure it and make sure I have that mark correct, which I do. So now we're going to attach that flap. Now I did forget in the previous steps, and I'm going to do it now, is to baste this. For some reason I didn't, but we need to baste this bottom edge of our constructed exterior pocket to the main. So I'm going to do that now. Sorry, we forgot about doing that. So if you didn't do that, you can go ahead and do this now as well. Trim all your threads. There we go. All right, so you're going to make a mark from the top down for where we're going to place the flap. So from the top down, then once you have that mark made, you're then going to place the flap centered at that mark. So the raw edge of the flap is at the top of that line and centered. Now what I'm going to do here is I want to make sure okay, so it's good, perfect. So we need to center it. So I've got to find the center of my frame and center it. So I'm just going to fold the wallet flap in half, and I'm just creasing it. I'm folding it in half at the bottom here where the raw edge is, and I've creased it, and I can see where my middle mark is. Gotta crease it again. So this is going to be going with the exterior side of the flap facing down. I'm going to use some pins. Where are my pins? Pins, pins, pins. Here they are. So I'm going to place some pins, and then I'm going to see if it is correct, because that's easier. So exterior side down, make your mark from the top down, find your centers, just like I'm doing, line up the centers, and the raw edge will line up with the top of that line you made from the side down, from the top down. And I'm going to place some pins, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it now down and see if my hardware lines up. And this is where you know if you need to make any adjustments. So I just need to slide it over a smidge. It's better to take your time and make all the adjustments and have everything fit properly so that when it comes time to use the bag, everything fits properly and you have no issues. And that's how it'll look. So it's good. I'm happy with the placement. I'm going to leave those pins in place. I'm going to fold my handle out of the way. Well, I'm leaving the pins in place, but I'm removing them just to make sure that my line is all lined up. There we go. And now what we're going to do is we're going to sew across this raw edge right here using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Oh, my hand was caught on that. And I think I'm going to switch out to a different thread here when I'm done this. So I'm going to switch my thread because I planned on using a different thread here for top stitching on this part. I only wanted the thread to be this color for when I was doing the straps or handles, sorry. So quickly switch my thread. Also because I don't have a whole lot of that thread left, so I don't want to run out partway through making the bag. Alrighty, now we are all set. So now that that's done, you're going to press the flap down here, and we're going to top stitch it in place using the seam allowance given in the pattern. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock that, and I'm going to go get my ruler, and I'm going to sew that, draw my line for my measurement just so that I can be totally accurate. So I'm going to pause the camera. I'm going to draw my seam allowance here from the top of this folded edge down so that I can stitch right on top of it and have a perfect seam allowance. So I'm going to go do that and I'll come back and then we will top stitch. All right, so I've drawn that seam allowance on the top of the flap here. So now it's folded and I've got it clipped in place. I'm going to stitch across that area and I'm back stitching well at start and stop just because that will have a lot of stress. Now I'm going to dust this chalk away so you can see. There we go, chalk dusted. Look at how pretty that looks. I love how I fussy cut that. I'm so happy I did. And when we open it up, you have the other flower facing the right way. I'm so happy that I fussy cut that. So flip your handles up. And the flap sits nicely under your handles. You can adjust it to make it sit flat like I just did, but over time it'll naturally go, and that's how it looks. I love it. Now, before we continue on, undo the flap from the hardware. Don't have it closed, because when we go to turn the bag right sides out, having that closed, you can actually pull this off. So don't have it closed right now. Leave it open. So undo your wallet closure. So I'm going to put this one off to the side for now. We're going to now work on creating our lining zipper pocket. So we need our 2 zipper pocket pieces and our zipper pocket zipper. And we also need our lining main, 1 lining main, and our facing, zipper pocket facing. So you need all these pieces. So put the main and zipper facing off to the side for now. We're going to start with the zipper pocket panel. So first what you're going to do is lay 1 zipper pocket panel right side up. Then you're going to lay your zipper right side up on top. Now what you can do here if you want, which is what I'm going to do, I'm going to add my zipper pull after. So I took my zipper pull off. I'm going to get this all stitched, and then I'll add my zipper pull to my zipper once I have it all stitched. And that'll just make it easier for me. When stitching, I don't have to worry about moving my zipper pull out of the way, but I have to remember to add it. So I'm going to switch to a zipper foot, and to remember to add it, I'm going to put that there. And that's my little zipper helper. So now I'm going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. All the way across. And remember, your zipper is facing right sides up. So the wrong side of the zipper is against the right side of your lining fabric, your zipper pocket fabric. Press the panel away from the zipper, just like that. Grab your second zipper pocket piece with it right side up. Place the zipper right side up on top. Line up your side edges so that everything all lines up. Clip it in place. And then again, we're going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Press this away from the panel, and I just finger press. Now I'm going to switch back to my regular foot. Place this off to the side for now. We're going to grab our zipper pocket facing and our pins. Now, if you haven't already, you will want to draw the rectangle on the wrong side of the zipper pocket facing, and the instructions are given in the pattern for what the measurements are for where to place that. Once you have that done, fold it in half so you can find the center. And then there's a measurement that you need to make from the top of the lining down. And I don't know if you can see mine. I think you can, yeah. From the top of the lining down, that's where the top of the zipper pocket facing is going to go, and you're going to center it. So I'm going to fold this again just to get my center marks. I can see it, but I'm just refolding it just to make sure. Yep. So lining up the center marks and the top of the zipper pocket facing with that line we made from the top edge down. So get it all lined up and centered. Oh, this pin is bent a bit. We won't use that one. I'll have to fix that later. So once you have it all pinned in place, we can then sew around the zipper pocket facing rectangle that we made. So we're going to sew directly on top of that zipper pocket facing rectangle we drew. Don't forget to backstitch at start and stop. Now, if you're worried about angled stitches in the corner, what you do is with your needle down, bring your stitch length to the shortest stitch length on your machine, take one stitch, return your stitch length back to the length you use. You'll then pivot if you haven't already. So up to the other corner, and then in that corner, again, I'm not going to pivot yet. I'm going to return my stitch length back down to 0, take one stitch, return my stitch length back to the length I use for stitching, pivot, or turn the corner and stitch all the way to the other corner. And I'm going to do that again in this corner over here. So needle down, lift my presser foot, turn my fabric, stitch all the way down to the other corner. There we go. And that's how you prevent angled stitches in the corners. Now we need to cut away at the center here. So using my seam ripper, I'm going to start cutting. And you can draw a line in the center here with the little V's, or as I like to call them, Y's. You can draw that so you know where to cut. Now careful when you're going into the corner that you don't cut your stitches. If you do, not to panic, what you can do is re-stitch them, and I'll show you what I mean as soon as I'm done cutting this. So what I mean is, say you cut the corner stitches here, right here, you cut the corner, and now your stitches are all undone. What you can do is come back over here, back stitch on top of the previous stitches, stitch all the way around, down that corner, and back around down here, and back stitch. That'll lock in those original stitches, but then it'll re-sew that corner for you. I've done this many times. It happens. We all do it. And then I just don't panic and I just do that. Now we need to take this pocket facing and push it through the hole so that the fabrics are wrong sides together. So you push it through the hole so the fabrics are wrong sides together, and then take it to your iron and give it a really good press. And you can use steam or spritz it with water and then press it really flat. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'll come back and we will install our zipper pocket. But first, I just want to put on my zipper pull, so I just use my handy zipper helper here. And I'm doing this before I forget. Evenly in. Trying to get it as even as possible. And I have another tutorial on my YouTube channel for how I use this. And you can use this with any zipper jig that you have. So much harder when there's all this fabric here. There we go. There we go. So my zipper pull is now installed. So I'm going to go press this and then I'll be back. All right, so my zipper pocket facing is now all pressed. As you can see, it's nice and flat. Now we need to install our zipper pocket. So with the zipper pocket piece, I just want to make sure that I'm going to place it right. So we're going to lay the zipper pocket pieces right side up, and with the zipper head closing to the left. So when it closes, that's what I was looking for. You want it to close so that it's going to the left. Now I'm going to add a bit of double-sided tape just along the edge of the zipper. You can use pins if you want. Sometimes I use painter's tape to hold everything in place too, especially when I'm running low on double-sided tape, or a glue stick. If you use a glue stick and you can't press your fabrics, what you need to do is wait for it to dry. But if you can press it after you put the zipper pocket facing, or the main panel on top of the zipper pocket, You can take it to your iron and press it, and that'll dry the glue and help hold everything in place. So remove the paper backing, and now we're going to place this main panel centered on top of the zipper. So you want to get this centered, the pocket pieces centered on the panel, and you also want the zipper teeth centered in the opening here. And again, if your zipper pull is not attached, you'll want to do that now before we sew this down. So there we go. I'm going to clip this here just to ensure that it doesn't get in the way, because I've had that happen before where the pocket shifts on me and it ends up underneath the presser foot. So just like that, I have it pinned. Now we're going to sew around this zipper pocket opening all the way around. And you can do the same thing we did previously on the, what was it? The pocket, the front pocket where we didn't backstitch and we pulled our threads through to the front, or to the back, sorry. You can do the same thing if you don't want any backstitching here. I'm using a thread that matches and it's the lining, so I'm going to go ahead and backstitch. Move my zipper pull out of the way. I've approached my zipper pull again. I'm going to zip it out of the way again. And as I said, my thread matches, so I'm okay with the back stitching. It won't be as noticeable. Trimming all my threads. Now I'm going to undo these clips. Next we need to flip it over so it's the wrong sides that we're looking at. We're looking at the wrong side of the main, but the right sides of the zipper pocket. Bring your top zipper pocket down to the bottom. Clip the side edges. Now what we're going to do here is we're going to trim this pocket, but first we're going to sew the sides of the pocket. So we're sewing just the sides of the pocket pieces. You're not sewing through your lining main, so move it out of the way. And I'm going to just pay attention to where my pocket ends. And I'm backstitching well because we're going to be turning the bag through this opening later. So again, moving my lining out of the way. Backstitch at start and stop. Backstitch well. Now we're going to trim that pocket. And you could have trimmed it before, but we've trimmed it now. And if you trim it before, you can also take it to your cutting board and use your ruler and rotary cutter to cut it. But it doesn't have to be perfect because nobody's ever going to see it. Now this is where you want to open your zipper for your zipper pocket, because we do need to have that open for birthing the bag later. But that's your pocket. It is all constructed. So you see we have a pocket with an opening right now. It'll all make sense later. We'll close that up after. So just put this off to the side. First, trim that thread. I don't want it peeking out on me later. Now we need to grab our zipper gusset pieces because we're going to create our zipper gusset. So grab out your top zipper or your main zipper. And again, I don't have my zipper pulls on this because I'm going to add them after I construct my zipper gusset because it's just going to be easier. Just makes it easier than having to try to fight with adding the, or having the zippers in the way. So I'm going to mark the center of my zipper. I'm going to fold it in half. Mark the center within the seam allowance. And I have my centers marked on all my panels. Perfect. Now what we're going to do is take an exterior gusset and we're going to lay it right sides up. Now, if you've cut your fabric like I did so that it'll line up later, you'll want to make sure you're doing this the right way. So exterior gusset right sides up. We're going to place the zipper right sides down. So the teeth of the zipper are against your exterior pretty side. Place the clip in the center, line up those center marks, and clip it the rest of the way. Now your zipper is going to be longer, that's what you want, and we're not trimming that off, we're leaving it. So now we're going to sew this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And I will switch to a zipper foot because that's going to be needed for the next step. So I'm going to switch out to my zipper foot. When I top stitch though, I like to use my regular foot. I just feel like it has more area that it covers on the fabric. Now we're going to take one of our lining zipper gussets and we're going to place it right sides down against the wrong side of the zipper. So what it is it's pretty side of the lining against the wrong side of the zipper, and then you have zipper right side against the exterior. So when you look at them, your lining and exterior are pretty sides touching. I'm lining up these side edges too. Get everything all nicely lined up. Clip it all in place. Oops. Now we're going to sew the gusset using the seam allowance given in the pattern. So sew all the way across using the seam allowance in the pattern. And this is why I find it easier to not have those zipper pulls, is because right here when we're sewing this, I feel like I can keep a nicer and more accurate seam allowance. And did I run out of thread? I totally ran out of thread. All right, so I'm gonna, excuse me, I'm gonna pause the camera. I'm going to wind my bobbin thread because I just ran out of bobbin, of course, and then I'll come back and we will continue on. Bobbin is filled and I finished sewing this edge here that I ran out of bobbin. So now we're going to take these and we're going to press both fabrics away from the zipper, and I'm not going to take this to my iron just yet, so that I don't have to get up so many times. I'm just going to place some clips and then I'm going to sew the other side to the zipper, and then when I get up to press the second side, I'll just do the first side as well. But that's how it looks. So we're going to wait and I'm going to top stitch and press everything after. So normally what you would do is you would take this to your iron, you would press it, then you would top stitch away from the edge here. But as I said, I'm going to wait so that I don't have to keep getting up as much because it starts to hurt my leg. So I'm going to repeat that whole process on the second side. So now I'm going to take this with my remaining exterior zipper gusset, right sides up, zipper right sides down, so the teeth are against the exterior, clip it together along that edge, all the way across, then we'll baste this in place. And you also want to make sure that these edges here line up. So the edges of the exterior all line up as well. So basting all the way across. Now, I keep running over my cord. Take your lining zipper gusset, center it. Oops. Make sure the side edges line up. Line up the side edges first. Clip it the whole way, all the way across. And now we're going to sew this with the seam allowance given in the pattern. Same thing as we did for the first side. Make sure you backstitch at start and stop. Sometimes, if you're like me, you get a little bit of shifting of the fabric, and that's okay. What I do is I just trim it down so it's the same as the exterior. So there's not a whole lot to trim, but just enough that I've got to trim a little bit off. So I'm going to do that now. Add my clips. And then I can trim it. So I just have a little bit that's stretched or shifted on me, and I'm just trimming it so it's even with my exterior. So now I'm going to take this to my iron and I'm going to press this. So I'll be right back. Now we are ready to go ahead and top stitch our zipper gusset. So switch to your top stitch length you like to use, and top stitch the entire length of the zipper gusset on both sides if you haven't, like I did. I'll trim my threads after. Trying to find where the threads are. They're hard to see because they blend right in with the fabric. There we go. Return your stitch length. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my zipper pulls because I didn't have them on, so I need to do that now. And I'm adding 2 because this is a double pull zipper. Oops. Of course, when I'm not on camera, this goes so much faster. So if you haven't, just like me, if you didn't have your zipper pulls on, go ahead and add them now. So that they meet in the middle, just like that. So now I have my 2 zipper pulls on. I just like to not have them on. It makes it easier when stitching my gusset, my zippers and stuff. I just prefer not to have it. It's a total preference, personal preference. Now I'm going to measure this to make sure it measures the right amount. So I'm going to go off camera and I'm going to measure the width of my gusset. Now, if your gusset does not measure the correct width, you will need to trim your base gusset to match. If your zipper gusset is too wide, you'll need to trim an even amount off both sides in order to make it the same width so that your zipper stays in the center. So if this is too small, you'll trim it, so you'll trim your base gusset so it is the same width. If this is too wide, you'll trim it down, but trim even amounts off both edges so that your zipper stays centered. So I'm going to go trim mine now if it needs to. I'm going to measure it and trim it if it needs to, and I will be back. All right, so I ended up having to trim my base just a little bit so that it was the same width as my zipper gusset. So I did that. Now we need to attach our short strap anchor. So you will grab your D-rings and your short strap anchor pieces, flip these over. So you're looking at the right side of your zipper gusset. I had to rebaste my gusset too, so I did that. So I have threads all over me. So you're going to thread your short strap anchor through one of your D-rings, just like that, and the other end. Now, this isn't in the pattern, but I'm going, oh, it is in the pattern, sorry. You're going to baste across the short edge of your short strap anchor. This will just help hold it in place. Just like that. I'm trimming threads as well. There we go. Now they are basted and the strap anchors are connected to our D-rings. Now we're going to place the zipper gusset right side up, and with the short end of the strap anchor, you're going to center it on the zipper so that it is sticking out past the end. And there is a measurement in the pattern, so I'm just going to go quickly off camera and do this here. Make a mark, because I've got a ruler here, so I can do this off camera. And it's just at the mark. I'm just making marks for how far off the edge this has to be. And I'm using a Frixion pen so that when I do hit this with an iron, if it is sticking out or you can see it, it will be removed. So sticking off the edge and centered to the zipper, pin it in place. Now remember, we're not trimming our zipper down. Your zipper is going to stay the length it is. Do not trim your zipper. So on the edge, see how the D-ring goes in towards the middle, towards my zipper pulls, and I have it hanging off the edge. I'll show you as soon as I get this one clipped, and it is centered just like that. Now we're going to sew this. So we're going to sew it to the end, or baste it to the end. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't with a seam allowance. And you're just sewing over the strap anchor. You're not sewing anywhere else, just the strap anchor. My thread is getting all twisted for some reason. Oops, ow. All right, so I've sewn that one in. I've basted it in place just in between the strap anchor. I'm not sewing anywhere else, just on the strap anchor. Just basting it in place just along the strap anchor. So you'll see it's basted just along the strap anchor. That's it. Which means we also went over our zipper teeth. Now we're going to take our base gusset, the lining piece, and we're going to place it so it is right sides up, and we're going to lay our zipper gusset right side up on top so that the linings touch, and then you're going to clip it in place. So I'm just going to clip here So your linings right now are what we're clipping together, not your exterior, just your linings. And I'm going to add an extra clip along the long edge just to sort of help hold it. And you want to make sure your exteriors are not clipped here. So with the exteriors out of the way, we're going to sew the layers together, sewing up to where the strap anchor basting is. So you're just sewing your linings going up to where your strap anchor basting is. And I just want to see what the seam allowance is. So again, I'm going up to where my strap anchor basting is. And remember, it's easier to go towards than away. So there's one side. Trim your thread. And this side I will have to go like this. I can't. I gotta go this way. So sewing again up to where the strap anchor is. So there we have it. We have just the linings stitched together here, no exterior. Now you're going to repeat that for the other side. So again, linings right sides together. Make sure your base gusset is not twisted. So see how it's going to form a little tube? Pin them together on the short edges. And then we're going to sew those short edges again, using the seam allowance given in the pattern, moving the exterior out of the way. So you don't want to sew through your exterior at all. You're just sewing through your lining. Something's going on here. I don't know what's going on. I don't think I cut my thread. There we go. Sometimes my machine does funny things. Make sure my bobbin is still in there. Yep. My machine is being funny today. All right, so there it is. We have it all attached. I'm just checking to make sure there was nothing in there. Now we need to add our base gusset exterior. So with the zipper gusset right side up, we're going to place the exterior so that it is right sides against the right side of the exterior gusset, zipper gusset. Clip it together again on those short edges, just like we did with the lining, keeping the lining out of the way. Make sure your hardware is out of the way as well, and we're going to sew this again with the seam allowance given in the pattern. And my presser foot is, there we go. Trim your threads and sew the other side. Now we need to attach the second side. So again, making sure it's not twisted, bring those short edges to meet. Pin it in place. And then sew this again with the seam allowance given in the pattern, making sure your lining is not in the way. Trim all your threads. And that's what this looks like so far. Now what we're going to do is flip it so it is all right sides out. You're going to press the seam allowance towards the base gusset. I'm just pressing it towards the base gusset. And I'm going to add a clip on each end. Oh, first, sorry, I jumped ahead. Before you turn that right sides out, what you need to do first is take these and pinch all the layers together, and just where the strap anchor is, we're going to stitch over that through all the layers, just where your strap anchor is. You're going to start and stop stitching where you started and stopped stitching for the lining or the exterior. So in between those stitching marks is where you're going to start and stop sewing. So you're just sewing over where the strap anchor is. Sorry, I jumped ahead on a step on you there. And you want to back stitch over this. I feel like my thread is getting twisted again. So there's one side. Now I'm going to sew the other side. Starting and stopping where we started and stopped previously. And this just closes up that little tiny gap that's there. There we go. Now we can just want to make sure so you can trim the foam from the seam allowance wherever you can. I'm not going to do that right now. I think I should be okay. But you can trim the foam wherever you can here from the seam allowance, and then press your seam allowance towards your base gusset. Press it well. And then, so I'm going to go press this off camera with my iron. I'm going to press it really well so that everything is pressed towards the base gusset, and then I'll come back and I may pick out some of this foam here. I just don't want to do that on camera because I have to undo basting stitches. So I may do that on off camera. So I'm going to go do that, and then I'll come back, and then we are going to then top stitch only where our strap anchor is when I come back. We're not going all the way across, just in this area here where the strap anchor is. That's it. So I'm going to go and press this, and then I'll come back and we will do that top stitching. I wanted to note too, depending on the webbing you're using, you may need to be really careful so that you don't melt your webbing. I'm using a different webbing than what I would normally use, and I did discover this not on this bag but on another bag, that when my iron hits it, it kind of melts it a little bit. So I press from the lining side when I press my bag. So now we're going to top stitch just where this strap anchor is. We're not going to top stitch all the way across, just that one little bit. And I'm going to add clips here so that nothing shifts on me. So again, I pressed from the lining side when I did this pressing. That way there I didn't hit any of my webbing at all. So we're top stitching where the webbing is, or the strap anchor, sorry. And don't forget to back stitch. You can also pull your threads through to the back and tie them off if you prefer. I will go back after and trim my threads. For now, I'm just going to go to the other side and repeat that whole thing all over again. Oh, that's not good what just happened there. It got caught on my hardware. So hold your hardware down too so that the ring doesn't jump up at you. Good thing I caught that. All right, I'm trimming all my threads, front and back. This side is a little bit hard because it's the exact same color, so it's a little bit hard to see. I didn't realize I had that good of a match. All right, change your stitch length back to the length you use for stitching your bag together. And that is how it looks when it's all top stitched. So again, just where your strap anchor is where I've stitched. So just right here, just the strap anchor. You want these ends to be free because this bag is going to be birthed. So see how my ends, my lining and my exterior are not stuck together except for where the strap anchor is? That's what you want. So I'll flip it this way so you can see. See how the exterior and lining are not attached? That's exactly what you want. Now we're going to take the completed lining main with the zipper pocket and place it right sides up. We're going to place the completed gusset right side up on top with the linings right sides together. So this is where, oh, I was right. So we're going to place the linings right sides together. So you'll notice I have a lining right side out. So I'm placing it right sides together. I'm lining up the center marks first. Making sure my gusset isn't twisted, bringing it down. So make sure that it's not twisted anywhere. Again, lining up the center marks on the bottom of the base with the center marks on the bottom of the main. Now, if you remember, there were marks on your main panel that you needed to make from the pattern piece. Those marks are where the zipper gusset and base meet. So see where our zipper gusset and base seam is? That's where that is going to line up with those marks. You want these to all line up so that everything fits perfectly. So pin those in place there with that mark. So that seam is getting placed at that mark. And then the rest of your fabrics can be eased in. So you can ease the fabric in the rest of the way around. Another thing you may want to do is add snips around the curves This will help get a nice flat seam. All the way around when we're sewing. Another thing I'm going to do is pull out my extension table because it'll be easier to sew this with my extension table. So I'm just easing the fabrics all the way around for this side. Make sure you don't clip that zipper pocket in the way. If you have to pin it up to itself, go ahead and add a pin to clip it out of the way. And then once I have this all clipped, I'll add those snips and the curves. And again, what that's going to do is it's going to help ease the fabrics in, and it'll open the fabrics up so that they lay nice and flat and you don't get any puckering. Okie dokie, time to make the snips. And you're making those snips only within the seam allowance. Don't go any higher than your seam allowance. So they're not very big snips. And here in this curve here at the top, just make sure you're only snipping the lining fabric, gusset and main. You're not snipping anything else. All right, time to grab my extension table. Okay, now we're going to sew this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And remember, those snips I made are within the seam allowance, so they will not affect the finished bag. There won't be any cuts in my finished bag when I'm done. Oh. Did I just lose some power here? There we go. So just make sure that that zipper pocket is out of the way as well as you're coming around sewing. Make sure everything is nice and flat. It's a bit to maneuver, but you can do it. Just keep everything together. All your layers nice and flat. I opened up the zipper because I find going around the top with the zipper open just makes it a little bit easier. You may find that easier too, to get around the top with the zipper open. move this out of the way now. Now we're going to repeat all those steps for the second lining. So you're going to tuck this gusset in, your exterior gusset in, so that the lining can come out. Had to flip it around. Tuck it this way, so bring it around this way so that the gusset is now like this. Your exterior gusset is now out this way. So tuck it out, sorry, not in is what I meant to say. This is where you can check and make sure that you're happy with how everything looks, which I am. So now we're going to add the second lining main. Same thing we did before. Line up your center marks, and it will feel a bit weird. I'm just going to move this because it's scratching me. There. My microphone clip is scratching me. So add a pin or a clip at the top. Get all those center marks lined up first. Tuck that exterior gusset up out of your way. And then again, where the seam is of the base gusset goes where that marking is. Make sure the seam is pointing down towards the base gusset as well. I still have my zipper open. I'm going to leave it that way. Ow. Keep pinning all the way around. And again, we'll make those snips within the gusset and the seam and the main panel just to help open everything up. It does really help. It makes a difference. Especially if you opted to use something like a canvas here, canvas or a vinyl or something without a whole lot of stretch in it, you definitely want to make those snips to really get this gusset to fit. With the snips again. Take your time to get these done. It is worth it. I could tell even when I was sewing around the first time, it really helped. Even if I was binding the bag, or binding any bag, I still make the snips in my seams here. When I have a curve, the binding ends up covering the snips, but I still make those snips in the seams because it still helps get your gusset fitting nice. So anytime I have a bag with curves, I always make the snips. Sometimes I don't, depends on the curve. This one's more of a smoother curve, so maybe I wouldn't have if I wasn't filming the tutorial, but I've started doing that, and I just find it makes all the difference in the world. Makes it a lot easier to get a nice smooth curve. Again, make sure that there's nothing else in your way. You're just sewing the lining gusset and the zipper and base gusset to your main panel. And you want to refer to the pattern for what that seam allowance is. And I'm just trying to smooth everything out underneath. Again, when I get to that seam where the base and the zipper gusset meet, I make sure it's pointing down. Down towards the base gusset. Uh-oh, and see what I did there? I accidentally got my zipper pocket caught. I totally forgot about the zipper pocket when I did this the first go around. I accidentally unclipped it. Easy fix, unpick my stitches and re-sew that area. Of course, it's right where I backstitched to. All right, easy fix. Add some clips and restitch. Keep the zipper pocket out of the way this time. And I can see where my previous stitches were, so I'm just stitching right over them. All right. So now I'm going to make sure my zipper pocket zipper is open, which it is. And now we're going to repeat this all for the exteriors. So I'm going to pull my linings like this. I'm just pushing my linings down into, so it's between the exteriors. So see that? It's just between the exterior. It's just going to make it easier. Now we want to make sure that the bag or the exterior with the wallet closure is not going to be on the same side as our lining zipper pocket. So I'm just going to push this back this way again. So I need to put it on this side. Yes. So back on that side. So make sure you're not putting your front of your bag on the same side as the zipper pocket. If it does go on the same side, don't panic. So if I turn this right sides out, I'm going to clip this together first so I know which side has to go where, and that's the side. And I'm going to flip this all around again, and I'm going to push my lining between. Oh, that's okay, I've got a clip. So clip it in place. Same thing we did with the lining. Clip the centers. Make sure the base isn't twisted. I'm going to tuck this handle inside here for now and the flap inside like that. Clip keeping the centers together. And then that seam where the zipper gusset meets the base, clip there. And then continue clipping the rest of the way around, easing your fabrics in between your clips. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to add those snips within the seam allowance to the lining at the exterior and the gussets, to the main, sorry, and the gussets. Can stay down there for now. Using lots of clips because I don't want any of this shifting on me while I'm sewing, because I feel like I have it clipped perfectly. Alright, so now we're going to make those little snips, and I go between my clips. I use my clips as the markings for where to snip. So between each clip, oops, and again up here. There we are. All right, extension table again. And now we're going to sew this using the seam allowance given in the pattern. And again, make sure you're only sewing through the exteriors here, nothing else. Take your time around the curves. And I just lifted my presser foot up there to make sure that seam where the zipper gusset and base meet is still pointing down towards the base. Oops. Now, keep in mind, you should not be sewing over any of that heavy interfacing that's in here because we have it trimmed so it's not within the seam allowance. So if you're hitting that interfacing, you might be using too big of a seam allowance, or you didn't trim this down if you needed to trim it down when you trimmed your base gusset to match your zipper gusset. Now we're going to attach the second side. Of the exterior to the gusset, and I'm just making sure before I do that that there's no puckers or anything, nothing that I'm not happy with, and it looks so pretty. It's so nice. Okay, now we can attach the remaining side, and if this is boring for you, you can go ahead and fast forward through all of this so that you don't have to watch this because it is being repeated right now. It's all the same thing from the lining to the exterior. But I want to record this just in case I think of anything as I'm sewing to give you for tips. So I'm letting it go. Again, making sure those seams where the zipper gusset and base meet. Oh. I guess Missy is having a dream and she just did this weird shaken noise thing. I always forget to sign the inside of my bags. I've done that on many of them, but then sometimes I just forget, especially while I'm filming tutorials. Sometimes I like to sign my name in my bags or write my name, so mgrahamsews on them, just so that if somebody ever gets my bag and say it gets donated and then somebody goes and finds it at a thrift store and they want to take it apart, you know, to use the hardware, they'll see who originally made the bag. I used to put little messages inside too. Lots of clips. This is the final side. We are almost done. And time to cut. So as you'll see, my lining is tucked down inside so that it's not in the way. So I've got my lining tucked inside. I won't accidentally catch it when I'm sewing. And if you'll notice, when you're clipping, you can even see it starting to happen where the snips are causing the fabrics to open up so that they spread nice and even. And that's because you have a curved edge going with something that's straight and not curved. And that's why we make those snips. It helps it open up better. So you can see the fabric. I don't know if you can see that right there. So see how it, yeah, you can. You can see how it opens up there. That's what it's doing. Helps it ease in nicely. go all the way around. This time you have a few more layers to hold out of the way because you already have an exterior attached. So it's a bit more of a workout this time. Hurt my hands. It is a workout for my hands. While sewing is not super physical, it does need some strength. You do use your hands a lot, so it does work out your hands. Maybe I didn't drop one. There we go. All right, so there we have it. That's how it looks. Now we're going to trim our seam allowance. And I just want to make sure I'm telling you the correct thing to do. I'm going to pull out my lining and tuck my exterior into it for now. The same way we had the lining, tucked into the exterior, because I'm going to trim the lining seam allowance down first. That didn't work out. It just popped right back out. I was pulling something and it popped right back out. Okay. So I'm going to trim my lining seam allowance carefully. I'm going to use pinking shears. This will just help reduce the bulk when we turn the bag right sides out. Again, just be careful that you're not trimming anything else but your two layers. So right now this is the lining main and the gusset. And it doesn't have to be pretty and exact. You just want to trim it down. Now the other side. Again, be careful when you're cutting. You don't want to cut any thread or any stitching or anything that you're not supposed to cut. Now I've got the lining tucked back in, and now I'm going to trim my exterior. And I'm going to use my regular scissors for this because sometimes I find trimming with my pinking shears is a little bit hard through all the layers. And you'll notice that that zipper is still long. You want it to stay that way. Don't trim that zipper or those strap anchor ends. I know those are on the other, in the middle there, but I just wanted to make note of that. We're not trimming anywhere where that is right now. But I don't want you to go and trim it thinking you forgot to do something. Last side, and then we can turn this right sides out and admire our bag. Oops. Oops. Checking everything to make sure I didn't accidentally clip any stitches. I'm just going to stitch here because I got kind of close, so I don't want it to come undone. Right here. So this is where you can check. I got kind of close, so I'm just stitching back around just for some extra security. All over me. I'm going to have to lint brush myself after. So now we're going to turn our bag, oops, right sides out. Take your time doing this. Now it should go through pretty easily. My hands weren't already hurting, it'd probably be even easier. Okay. And that's why it's important not to have that clasp closed. This is where you'll see if you have any puckers, but that's why I checked earlier to make sure. All the jingling. So I'm just looking to see if there's any puckers, because if there is, I can go and fix it now. No. Okay, so now what I need to do is turn it back. Sorry, I know we did that already, but because we have one more thing to do. So you didn't need to do this step that I just did. I just do that just so I can check and make sure there's no puckers. If this was a bag that would be harder for me to turn, I wouldn't have done it. But as you'll see, it turns quite easily even with the frames on. So there's one more thing we need to do, and that is take the seam allowance where the gussets are, the zipper gussets, and pinch them together at the lining and exterior. So here's my lining zipper gusset and here's my exterior zipper gusset. I'm going to put them together and I'm going to add some clips, and then I'm going to baste these together at the top. And what this does is it prevents my exterior from, or the lining from falling in and slouching inside the bag. It helps hold it up in the bag. So you're just going to sew along that edge. That's a broken clip. It was stuck to me where it was broken. So we're just going to baste it along that top edge where the zipper gussets are. And again, what this does is it helps hold the lining from falling inside the bag. Make sure you don't stitch past your exterior stitching too. You want to make sure you're above it. So if it's easier for you to stitch with this with the lining up, stitch with the lining facing, or the exterior up, stitch with the exterior facing you. So here I didn't catch it, so I'm going to go back. There we go. All right, now we can do the final turn. Now I thought I'd seen or felt a pucker somewhere. Maybe it was just a figment of my imagination when this was turned. Yeah, right here. So I can feel it there. Let me see if I can see it. No, maybe I didn't. I can't feel it. All right, we'll leave it. So now I'm going to turn this back right sides out. Just gonna grab a drink. My water bottle just leaked all over me. Awesome. Oh. Yeah, I think it was my imagination. So see how the lining is stuck to the exterior at the top? Now you won't have it fall inside on you. And I'll need to place some clips or iron this to get it really nice and pressed and give it its shape. And again, I can feel my interfacing there. It's not in my seam allowance. I'm just rolling my seams out. Now we're going to pull the zipper pocket up out of the bottom, fold it down. So just like that, fold it so the seams go, so the raw edges are inside, so it's wrong sides together. And then add some clips. Now we're going to sew this folded edge using the seam allowance given in the pattern. You can also stitch this by hand if you prefer. I know some don't like having this stitching showing. I feel like it's in the pocket. It's not really going to get seen, especially once the pocket is filled with all the goodies you put inside. push the pocket back inside the bag. I push the corners down, make sure I get it pushed in. Pocket closed. Fix your lining so it's nice and flat inside. See how it's nice and flat in there? Definitely need to give this a press. I'm going to leave the plastic over my frame just because if when I do put this away it won't get all scratched up. And that way there, if I give this away or I sell it, it will look nice as the day I made it. It's a really cute little bag. Look at this. One last thing to do though, before we get all excited about being done. Making our strap. So you may have a different length of webbing cut than I do because you may want a different length. I'm making mine adjustable. Now, if you would prefer to use material for this, I do have a tutorial on my YouTube channel for how to make a strap when the pattern calls for webbing. So what we're going to do is, if you have a bar on your slider that can move, I let it drop to the bottom. So just like that. I slide my webbing through, bring the bar down so it touches my webbing. So bring it down now so it touches the webbing, and bring the strap back through to the other side so it goes over the middle bar. And just like we did before, you're going to fold it over. I'm going to use a bit of double-sided tape. Just to help hold it in place. And I have my marking there, so I'm going to make sure I have that where the marking is. So just like that, no raw edges, just like we did before. Now I can't sew this because I have a different thread on here, but I want to go back to my thread that matches. Normally I wouldn't worry about switching threads, but I just want it to match for this. And I am going to add rivets later, but I won't do that on camera. I'll do that off camera because you don't need to sit there and watch me do it. Go. Okay, now I'm going to stitch this in place just like we did when we did the what was it that we filled? Oh, the handles, sorry. And like I said, I'm going to add rivets, but I'll do that off camera just because I don't want you to have to sit and watch me do that. So there's the one end with the slider on. So now with the slider facing up and my folded edge, the edge that I folded is also facing up, I'm going to make sure that that's the side that my strap is on. Swivel hook against the table, slide the webbing through the hardware on the swivel hook, up through your slider, over the middle bar so it looks like this, come back down. Now with your slider against the table, so the slider is wrong sides up, I'm going to add a bit of double-sided tape here. Because we need to fold over that raw edge, I was going to say finished edge. Again, slider or swivel hook against the table, feed your webbing through, your strap through, fold it over at the mark made. So there is that measurement that we're using again. And then you will stitch this in place, just like we did with this. I'm going to go off camera, quickly add some rivets to my strap, and then I will come back and we will finish everything up. All right, so I've added those rivets to my strap. Now I'm just going to clip my strap to my bag. So we now have our strap added to our bag. And the nice thing about this strap being a crossbody strap is I can adjust it to wear it as a shoulder bag or wear it crossbody. And then you have these cute little handles that you can just hold on your arm or carry it in your hand. So you can take the strap off and just carry it as a little bowler bag, or you can wear it as a shoulder bag or crossbody bag. So there you have it. Your Howie Bowler Bag is all complete. You are ready to take it out and show it off to the world. But before you do, don't forget to take lots of photos and share them on social media using the hashtags given in the pattern. This way we can easily find your Howie Bowler bags and we can all admire them with you. Thank you for sewing along with me. I hope you picked up a few tips and tricks along the way. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye, and thank you for sewing with me.